The Sixth Ward used to mean something. Not something good necessarily, but something real. It used to be a place people came home to. Now it was the kind of place that watched you come in and measured the odds of you leaving. Corner stores wore metal grates like tired eyelids. Old murals bled through new paint. Faces of people the city had stopped pretending to remember. The Sixth Ward held its breath every night, and every morning it was surprised to still be breathing. Officer Danny Reyes walked the block like the academy was still grading him. New boots, new uniform, new fear, polished bright enough to pass for courage from a distance. He had been on the job 11 weeks. You could tell by looking at him. Not because he was young, but because the city hadn't gotten to him yet. His uniform still held a crease that would not survive another month on these streets. He walked with the careful deliberateness of a man who had memorized the manual and was waiting for the world to behave accordingly. It wouldn't. He kept touching his radio like it was a prayer, because belief in something beats the alternative. In the Sixth, prayers had bad reception. The radio was the thinnest thread between a cop and the rest of the world. Some nights that thread held. Some nights it just gave you something to hold on to while it didn't. Dover Alley was the kind of place that didn't appear on tourist maps, which was fine because no tourist had ever made the mistake of coming to the Sixth Ward twice. It ran between two brick buildings that had been arguing with gravity for 60 years and were starting to lose. Dumpsters lined the walls like sentinels that had given up on their posts. The pavement was cracked and stained in ways that told stories nobody wanted to hear. Officer Reyes turned into it without thinking. Dover Alley waited for him with brick walls, dead air, and nowhere worth running. That was the thing about traps. They never announced themselves. 3 shapes stepped into the alley mouth behind him with the unhurried ease of men who had done this before and expected to do it again. They didn't run. They didn't shout. They just appeared, the way bad news appears, already there before you noticed it arriving. The alley got smaller. The night got heavier. And Officer Danny Reyes understood with the particular clarity that only real danger provides, that the academy had not prepared him for this. Cassius Rowe stood in the middle, still as a verdict. He had never once needed to raise his voice. That was the thing about real power. He didn't need to perform it. He generated it. He stood in the center of the alley with his hands loose at his sides, dressed simply, wearing nothing that needed to prove anything. The 2 men flanking him were lean and quiet. Trigger on the left, holding a blade the way a man holds a tool he knows how to use. Marco on the right, younger, with the restless energy of someone who had been waiting for this moment all day and was enjoying it more than he should. Cassius looked at the young cop with the expression of a man reading a balance sheet, calm, thorough, already calculating the outcome. Danny Reyes drew his weapon the way he had been trained. His academy instructors would have given him a passing grade. His hands, however, shook in ways no classroom ever mentioned. They shook with a fine, persistent tremor that no amount of training could have predicted. He kept the gun up. That was the important thing. He kept it up, and he kept his feet. He did not run. That was more than some men would have been able to manage. Cassius took 1 step forward, just one. He didn't need more than that. One step from a man like Cassius Rowe communicated everything speech could not. It said, "I have done this before." It said, "Your gun does not frighten me the way you need it to." It said, "The arithmetic of this situation has already been calculated, and you are not on the winning side of it." Trigger's blade caught a sliver of light from somewhere above. Marco's folding knife opened and closed, opened and closed. A sound like a small, patient clock counting down to something. Marco smiled like the night had finally started paying him back. 3 floors above the alley floor, on a fire escape that groaned softly under his weight, Jake Mason sat in the dark and watched. Mason was a large man, not the kind of large that announces itself in a room, the kind that a room quietly reorganizes itself around. Broad through the shoulders, thick through the hands, with a face that had been rearranged by life more than once and had settled into something that no longer bothered with expression unless expression was necessary. He had not come out for this. Mason did not help cops. He did not help criminals. Mostly, he tried not to help at all. He watched the alley below and told himself it was not his problem. He had told himself that before. He was good at it. He had been practicing for years. But 3 men were spreading out below him, and 2 blades were writing a story with a bad ending. The math kept presenting itself, the way bad math always does, and the kid with the gun was scared enough to make the whole alley nervous. 3 men, 2 blades, 1 scared kid with a gun and shaking hands. The angles were wrong. The numbers were wrong. The kid might get one of them. Might. But not before the other 2 closed the distance. And in an alley that narrow, distance closed fast. Mason had seen this equation before. He knew what the answer looked like. He had seen it in alleys like this one, in cities that all look the same after dark, in the particular stillness that settles over a place right before something irreversible happens. He didn't want to see the answer to the equation again. Mason looked at the knives, looked at the cop. He looked at the distance from the fire escape railing to the ground, 12 feet, maybe 14. He looked at the cop again. The math was wrong. He hated wrong math. Then he swung over the railing without a sound. Some men fall. Mason descended. Controlled. Deliberate. As if gravity had learned long ago that he was not a man to be rushed. He moved down the fire escape ladder in the dark with the practiced quiet of someone who had done this kind of thing before, in other alleys, in other cities, for reasons he had mostly stopped examining. He dropped the last 8 feet and landed in a crouch behind Trigger and Marco, silent as a thought they hadn't had yet. Danny Reyes saw him. The young cop's eyes went wide for just a fraction of a second. The kind of involuntary reaction that could get both of them killed. The fight lasted about 3 minutes, maybe less. Trigger was fast, faster than his stillness suggested. He turned and the blade came up in a tight arc. The edge caught Mason across the forearm. A clean line, quick and cold. The kind of cut that doesn't announce itself until a moment later. Mason registered it the way a man registers rain on a window. Present, noted, irrelevant to the immediate situation. Mason's response was not anger, it was calculation. He found Trigger's wrist, applied pressure at the precise angle that the human joint was never designed to resist, and introduced Trigger to the alley floor in a way that made further conversation unnecessary. Trigger met the ground like it was his destiny. Marco came in fast and loud, which was the wrong approach. Fast and loud tells a man like Mason exactly where you are and exactly how committed you are. And commitment without precision is just momentum. Mason redirected Marco's momentum into the brick wall. With considerable emphasis, the alley echoed the sound of Marco's regret. Cassius had not moved. He stood where he had been standing, hands still loose at his sides, and watched the arithmetic of the situation rewrite itself in real time. His expression did not change. Men like Cassius did not let their faces betray them. But something shifted behind his eyes, a recalculation, a reassessment, the particular stillness of a man who has just observed a variable he failed to account for. Jake Mason stood between Danny Reyes and the retreating gang, neither cop nor criminal. Something else entirely. Nobody spoke for a while. In an alley like that, silence did the talking, and it had a lot to say. Cassius looked at his men, both of them breathing hard and reconsidering their evening, and made the calculation that only a man with genuine intelligence makes in a moment like this. He chose tomorrow over tonight. He stepped back toward the mouth of the alley, unhurried, not in defeat, but in the deliberate manner of a man who controls the timing of everything, including his own departures. At the alley entrance, he paused and looked back at Mason with the level gaze of a man making a promise that did not require words. It was not settled. It would never be settled, not in the way either of them would prefer. Men like Cassius never leave a balance sheet alone. They always came back. When it was over, Reyes still shook, not from fear, or not only from fear, but also from the particular aftermath of adrenaline. He holstered his weapon with hands that were steadier than they had been minutes earlier. He looked at the large man standing in the alley with a cut on his arm, and he asked for a name. Mason looked at him for a moment as if the question were in a language he had mostly forgotten. Mason gave him the only answer he had. 3 men with blades and 1 scared kid with a gun. The math didn't work. He fixed the math. That was all it was. That was all it ever was. Before he left, Mason told Reyes one thing that wasn't about math. He told him to call for backup before walking the 6th alone again. Not because the rules said so, because the rules were written by people who had never stood in an alley at night with the wrong numbers and no one coming. Advice, Mason had learned, was cheaper than mercy, and it lasted longer, sometimes. He climbed back up to the fire escape. The alley below had gone quiet, not peaceful. The 6th Ward was never peaceful, but quiet in the way a place goes quiet after something has passed through it and left it slightly different than it found it. 3 days later, the papers ran a story about a reduction in gang-related incidents in the 6th Ward. They cited statistics. They quoted a police department spokesperson. They put clean numbers in the place where the truth was, which is what papers do, which is what cities do, which is what everyone does when the truth is too complicated to fit in a headline. But in this city, a balance sheet sits open, waiting.